Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cascadian Swinger. I'm Eddie Smith, and I've brought him back. John Floresca is with me, and we are ready to talk some Cascadia soccer, playoff soccer. We are going to get right into this with talking about the recap of Seattle Sounders versus LAFC. John, what did you like about this game?
I liked the final scoreline. I love that the Seattle Sounders won 3-1 and advanced to the semifinals. I love the fact that the big three, per se, for the Sounders all scored goals. Jordan Morris, Raul Ruiz, and Nico Ladero each had a goal apiece. I like the fact that it was pretty low stress, and the Sounders came out of the game clean, so they're looking forward to playing Dallas. So other than that, it was a pretty straightforward game. LA was just missing too many pieces, and I've said it in the past. The playoffs aren't about having a bunch of steady players. It's about having big game players on your team. LAFC was missing Diego Rossi. They were missing Brian Fernandez. They still had Carlos Vela, but he missed a PK in this one. And so the Sounders kind of made it look easy. What do you think, Eddie?
I want to emphasize on that PK. I felt like that should have never happened. And it's just the continuous argument that you and I have is I really think that the Sounders need to move on from Nuhu. I've gotten off the Nuhu train, I think about a year and a half ago. And he's just too much of a liability, I feel. He goes up the field like an attacking defender, but then doesn't follow through with his attack. And then on the defensive end, he loses the ball and then makes bonehead mistakes where he tackles guys in the box and loses his men. It just doesn't make any sense for me anymore to have him on the pitch, at least not as a starter.
Of course, you're going to criticize the only harsh point about the whole game. I mean, the Sounders played a pretty solid 90. They did give up a goal later. At that point, LAFC was already chasing the game. But yes, Nuhu makes a mistake. But look at the other 95% of the game, and he plays just fine. And, you know, the phrase goes, if you are a soccer player, you know this phrase, that as a defender, you can play 89 minutes really well, but you play 1 minute and you make a mistake and you can cost your team the game. While for a striker, you can play 89 minutes and be non-existent and have that 1 minute of brilliance and score your goal, and you're the man of the match. And that's just the way soccer goes. It's unfortunate for the defenders that they literally have to play well for 90 straight minutes. And Nuhu has not figured that out yet. I do agree with you. But he does so much right, and the talent is there that I'm still on the Nuhu train.
He does do a lot right. He was in the back and saved a lot of potential balls going into the back of the net. But still, I just feel like that play that was in the box, very unnecessary to go and tackle the guy. He's also tackled guys when they were on the sideline, had nowhere to go, and just doesn't make any sense. But not going to dwell on Nuhu for too long, because I want to get to the positives. These goals by the Sounders were, in my thought, just class. My favorite goal, I think, personally, was the Morris goal. I absolutely love the no-look shot, because if you look at the replay, he's looking a complete 180 from where the goal is, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm still a fan of the first one, only because at that point the game was still tight, so the Sounders had to create the space. The through ball, or the low cross by Rui Diaz to Jordan Morris, was gorgeous. I've watched that highlight a few times to see the angle the ball takes. Beautiful pass, and then the layoff by Jordan Morris, and then Ladero's finish. If you look, he actually had a much tighter little corner to get it in than we all thought. So he snuck it in there. That was my favorite goal of the game. You are totally right, though. The goals are a talking point because none of them came off of fluke mistakes. They were all created by the Sounders. Every single goal was build up creation. I mean, you could say Rui Diaz's, which came off the corner, but it was still, structured. It wasn't, oh, a defender slips and we scored a goal, or the goalkeeper makes an error and we scored a goal. It was the fact that the Sounders actually created these goals makes them look really strong going into the rest of the playoffs.
With both of us talking about the first and third goals, I want to also bring up that second goal of Rui Diaz that you just mentioned, because I felt like that was just a clinical finish where he didn't really have much of a area to shoot at. And so he was able to bank it off of the LA defender, or did it hit an LA defender? I thought it did. And then it deflected off the goalie's hands.
I don't think so. I thought it was a clean shot, but I'd have to rewatch the highlight.
Well, still absolutely clinical by Rui Diaz.
You want to talk about clinical and Rui Diaz? In 7 playoff games, he has 8 goals and 6 assists. So he is averaging either 1 goal, 1 assist. He's averaging two goals as either being an assist guy or a goal guy per game in the playoffs. That is incredible, and just absolute assassin, as they like to call him.
And the commentators during this match even emphasize that he looks like an assassin out there as well.
I won't go that far. I think he's a really friendly guy. I've seen his Twitter, or not his Twitter, his social media accounts, and he's a friend. He plays with his kids. He's super friendly. Don't get the looks part. Okay, I don't think anybody looks like an assassin.
Well, that's what the commentators said.
Right.
And he looked like he was ready. He looked like he was ready to score.
I don't think the commentators should be saying that either. But
all right, well, Rui Diaz is going to be taking his 2 goals per game average into the next round versus Dallas. And should Dallas be worried? I think so.
I think so, but then again, Dallas is a young team. They're not afraid of anybody or anything. The last time these two teams faced actually was last year in the playoffs because of the wonky schedule. Dallas didn't make the MIB tournament because of COVID, and then Seattle never traveled outside of the West Coast the rest of the year. So this is the first time they faced since that 4-3 extra time thriller last playoffs. Jordan Morris had a hat trick in that game. It was the first ever postseason hat trick for a Sounders player in club history. So that's pretty awesome. Do you think he'll repeat that performance against Dallas?
Maybe not to the tune of a hat trick, but I could see Morris gain a goal or 2 in this match. I'm still thinking it's going to be a 3-1, 3-0 match for Seattle. I think that they should be able to do away with these kids from Dallas. I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy match, like I said, for the Dallas-Portland series, because you saw how that went. But at the same time, I don't know if Portland really gave the respect to Dallas that Dallas deserved, because I felt like that was a very winnable game for Portland, and they just didn't come out to play in that match and ended up losing in PKs. So as long as Seattle respects Dallas and their talent, I think Seattle will be just fine.
I agree with you. Seattle's definitely the heavy favorites. Listening all week to different extra time radio and different MLS podcasts and reading, Seattle's the heavy favorite to win this thing. And that's no discredit to Sporting Kansas City, which is the number 1 seed in the West, but just top to bottom, the talent on Seattle is so great, as proven by the fact that Kelvin Leerdam, who we don't know what his status will be for the game, was out. And in came Alex Roldan, and Alex Roldan probably had the best game I've ever seen him play in a Sounders uniform against LAFC. So whether they're full strength or not, Seattle's got so many pieces that can attack you. Portland doesn't have that. They were missing Nizgoda, they were missing Blanco. They do have pieces that can come in and fill in those gaps, but they don't have the depth that Seattle has. And FC Dallas is going to be dealing with a very different quality of squad when facing this Sounders team.
You mentioned Alex Roldan. I wanted to chime in a little bit on him with I mean, we're going to get into this more when we get into our season wrap-up show after the playoffs are all over. But what I wanted to bring up with him was with how well he played in this match versus LA. Last year, he ended up getting cut from the team, ended up getting brought back, but with him changing positions to right back or just being in the back line, I should just say, do you think that gets him another year with the Sounders?
I think so. I think that game against LAFC, the fact that he was put in to start already shows that the Sounders know what he's capable of. To say, it's a playoff game and we're gonna put him in instead of, in previous years you may have seen them do some funky things where they move Brad Smith over, or you see things like that. But they or even move Christian Roldan back in that spot. We have seen Christian Roldan play right back as well. But they said, no, we're going to keep our lineup the way it is, and we're going to put Alex Roldan in. I think that shows the trust and the development of him as a player. And I think that's great for him, and it's great for the club.
I completely agree. I love seeing that the club is starting to get true depth pieces in that back line. That's something I've been talking about with you for about 2 years now, where I don't, or at least a year and a half since Marshall retired, that I just don't care for that back line. But the fact that they are starting to get pieces for depth is awesome, and it's just going to make this Sounder squad that much more dangerous moving forward into the years to come.
I agree. Speaking of the back line and speaking of depth, there's the pieces on Dallas that I want to talk about that Seattle does have to keep their eye on. So of course, there's Michael Barrios out on the wing for Dallas. He's a little speedster. If he gets to the end line, he can cause havoc for Dallas. Then you have a player who I really like, Matt Hedges, who's one of the top center backs in this league. He can score goals as well. Dallas actually had Hedges and Defensive Player of the Year Walker Zimmerman quite a few years ago. And that was the strongest back line in the league at the time. They obviously parted ways with Walker Zimmerman. They kept Hedges, but Hedges is still very, very good player. He's scored against the Sounders in the past. I actually have him scoring in this one on a set piece, just because I don't feel the Sounders are the strongest on set pieces. So I'm going to say 3-1 Seattle Sounders. I'm going to say Jordan Morris gets a hat trick just because it's fun to make the prediction. And Matt Hedges scores the one for Dallas.
Well, something I'm going to mention is one thing the Sounders are going to definitely need to watch out for is the counterattack by Dallas. We saw this in the Dallas-Portland match where Francisco Jara was able to get behind the Seattle defense. I think if the Seattle make sure that they play a little bit defensive, or make sure that they have a defensive set ready to go, you won't have to worry about the possibility of Hara going behind the line. I don't think that's going to happen, but just something to point out. Also, Brian Reynolds, homegrown player in the back line. He's been doing pretty well for Dallas, so definitely watch out for him. He was pretty all over the field during the last match against Portland. But in reality, I think that this is going to be a pretty straightforward match, hopefully for Seattle. I'm going to say Ricardo Pepe is going to get the lone goal for Dallas. I'm thinking that it's going to be Rui Diaz with a brace, and then Morris netting the third goal. So yeah, I think it's going to be 3-1 Seattle, and Seattle will move on to the next round versus either Sporting KC or Minnesota.
Well, let's make that prediction. We've got extra time. We only have one Cascadia team to talk about. Let's predict the other semifinal game, and then let's do a little bit of East talk, and then we'll wrap the show up. Who do you think it's going to be? You think it's going to be SKC or Minnesota?
My heart wants Minnesota. Jon and I spent a little bit of time in Minnesota, and we absolutely loved our time hanging out with the Minnesota United supporters. They were awesome. And if there's one team other than other than our Cascadia side that are in it, I'm rooting for Minnesota right now. I just thought they were absolutely class out there when we were there. So in my heart, I want Minnesota, but I really think it's going to be Sporting Kansas City winning this one 2-1.
I agree with you. My head says Sporting Kansas City. My heart says Minnesota for part of the same reason. We visited LAFC and Minnesota during that road trip just to see the two new stadiums. I loved Minnesota's environment, their fans, everything. It was great being in Minnesota. So to see them win and play the Sounders would be great. Plus, I also want to see Ozzy Alazo against the Seattle Sounders. They didn't get to see him at all this year. So to get that matchup, Ozzy would be fired up playing in CenturyLink against the Sounders to try to knock them out of the playoffs. So, but again, I think it's going to be Sporting Kansas City. On the other side, the East has gone totally wonky. We've got number 3 Columbus and number 6 New England. I think it's number 6.
Number 8.
Number 8 New England. So we've got a bottom seed, a team that had to play a play-in game, that upset Philadelphia, that upset who they just upset? I just watched
Orlando.
Orlando. Who do you want to win that game? Both of them are juicy. Either one makes the finals. You got Caleb Porter or Bruce Arena, both who used to coach on the West Coast, now coaching for the East.
Well, I'll say this: before this series or before this round started, you and I were talking about who we thought and was going to move on, and I said that I felt like this New England squad was more dangerous than what people give them credit for, and they ended up going into Orlando and just taking care of Orlando handily. They were up 2-0, I think, before Orlando scored. I'm not going to even look at the stats, but they ended up winning the match 3-1. This Columbus side barely squeaked out a result through at home versus Nashville. And it took them till extra time to win 2-0. And I think that's just wearing down a new squad. But at the same time, I felt like Columbus maybe should have been able to handle them a little bit better than they did. I'm giving this to New England to get all the way to the final.
You can't count Bruce Arena out. Bruce Arena is one of the best coaches in American soccer history. I think he actually has the most wins. I know Siggy had passed him, but I think since he's coaching again, I think he surpassed Siggy. So I think Bruce Arena does have the most wins as an MLS soccer coach. I'd have to double check the facts there, but I know those two were up there. So if you're going by coaching, I would definitely say New England advances. If you look at lineup top to bottom, I'm going to say Columbus. And Columbus being at home, I'm going to say Columbus wins this one 2-1.
That's going to be a pretty interesting series, I think, when that comes up. So that's going to wrap up our show. What do you think is going to happen in our match with the Sounders and Dallas? Who do you think is going to make it to the MLS Cup Finals from the East? We'd love to hear from you. That's going to be our show. And as always, go Cascadia.